Hello and welcome to PenFed Credit Union headquarters in Tysons, Virginia. I'm Andrea McCarran with PenFed Digital. I am honored today to be joined by our new leader of our PenFed Foundation, retired U.S. Army 4-star General Mick Nicholson. General Nicholson served 76 months in combat, spent 6 years in Afghanistan, led forces there along with NATO's Resolute Support Mission. He is one of the longest serving 4-star generals in combat in American military history. And I'm very pleased to say he is still serving today, but now in a new way as the president of PenFed's Foundation. Thanks for joining us, General. And let's begin with why the foundation? Of course, when you retired recently, you had a lot of options. Why the foundation?
Well, you spend 3.5 decades serving alongside America's finest young people, and it was a wonderful opportunity to continue giving back to them and through them giving back to the country. So when PenFed reached out to me, it was just too great of an opportunity to pass up.
And how do you think your service to our country over 36 plus years really prepared you for this new mission?
Sure. So working closely with America's young men and women who are out there on the front lines protecting our country every single day, understanding their needs, their aspirations, their ambitions. This is a young force. The average age when I was in the 82nd Airborne Division was 26. Half of our young military service members are married, so they want to start a family. Many of them are interested in a career. They have the same aspirations that many others have, and the foundation offers ways to help them achieve their goals, especially in the financial arena, which is our unique niche in the overall veteran landscape.
And we're going to get to more on that in just a moment. If you are joining us now, we are chatting live with retired U.S. Army 4-star General Mick Nicholson, the president of PenFed's Foundation. We'd like to invite you to post your questions on all of our social platforms. We'll get to them as soon as we can. Also, feel free to post your comments and your location, where you're joining us from, where in the world you're joining us from this morning. Let's talk about your foundation priorities. Financial assistance is really critical, helping our military families.
So it's the #1 stressor for most service members and veterans, beyond the stresses of combat, obviously, and we have been in a long stretch of combat operations. But when you look at those military families that are out there supporting their service members, finances always come up as one of the top concerns. And so specifically, because we're the foundation of a credit union, we have unique subject matter expertise and understanding of the financial sector. So this is the area we've tried to focus on, dealing with life's financial challenges as well as life's financial opportunities.
So what is available to active duty veterans, military families, caregivers that might be watching this now?
Sure. So on the one end of the spectrum, we help when military families and veterans run into financial challenges. We can help with
emergency assistance.
Emergencies. And this will be through our Helping Our Military Heroes Fund. And this includes things like emergency financial assistance, grants to deal with a near-term, one-time crisis they may be dealing with. It also involves interest-free loans. So for example, previously when we had a government shutdown and some of our service members in the Coast Guard were doing without pay, the credit union made available and the foundation made available assistance to those service members. When service members want to buy their first home, or veterans want to buy their first home using a Veterans Administration loan, they still have to pay closing costs. So we'll step in and help them.
And that's our Dream Makers grant.
It's called the Dream Maker grant, that's right. And these grants, we've given out over $7 million in Dream Maker grants that have put hundreds of military families and veterans into their first home. Now as you move up the scale, we also help veteran entrepreneurs. So those who are working, we find 250,000 military members leave the service every year. About 50,000 of them look to start their own business. And so there's a significant portion of people coming out with leadership, training, they've run organizations, they're problem solvers, they're used to dealing with adversity, they have tremendous drive, and they want to start a business. But what they don't have it's maybe the financial acumen, the experience, they don't have the funding. So this is where we step in with our veteran entrepreneur programs.
And I know one of your priorities is helping women entrepreneurs, women veterans.
Right, so women veteran entrepreneurs is a particular focus of ours. We find this is a group that is underinvested in. So we see
dramatically so from the numbers I've seen.
So this is why we have highlighted this as an area, and we're working closely with one Air Force veteran, Susie Miles, who runs a yoga enterprise and hires military spouses. And so we're working closely with her on her business plan and future investments so that she can expand her operations. This is just one example. And so we help at all stages of an entrepreneur's lifespan, if you will, from the idea stage, helping them formulate it into a feasible business plan, incubating that in the lingo to help them get to where they're ready for investment. And then in some cases, we'll actually make investments through the convertible notes that then go into the business for a short period of time and then come back, and we can give that money to another veteran.
And I do want to alert anybody who's watching this that you can get all the information on the priorities of the foundation, Dream Makers grants, financial assistance, and also how you can become involved as a volunteer, a potential donor at penfedfoundation.org. Again, it's www.penfedfoundation.org. We will be posting that address on all of our platforms. I'm going to turn this over to Julie Myers, our PenFed Digital colleague, who has a couple of things. You've got some audience questions, but also we're so impressed with how much the foundation gives.
Right.
Do you have some statistics you want to share with us so the general doesn't have to brag on his own folks?
I do. You were briefly talking about the Veteran Entrepreneur Investment Program, and just in 2019 alone, more than $800,000 has been given to these veterans. And then just to come back to 2001, since 2001, the PenFed Foundation has provided more than $34.5 million in financial assistance to help more than 140,000 military families.
It's incredible. And I just want to jump in before you get back to some stats. We want to say hello to Leashes of Valor, a female veteran co-founded organization. Delighted to hear that PenFed is aware of the funding issues for female veterans as entrepreneurs through the transition to civilian life. Flags of Valor also joining us this morning. So proud to partner with PenFed Foundation and continue to serve our veterans. The team at Leashes of Valor joining from across North America this morning, and thanks you for your time this morning, General Nicholson.
Thank you.
PenFed Credit Union and the PenFed Foundation have just wonderful partners, and I know the digital team is always looking to support veteran-owned and operated businesses as we go on the road. But tell us a little bit about these kind of partnerships, and then we'll go back to Julie.
Well, partnerships are key. We're part of a wonderful community of Americans who want to help veterans and active duty service members. And I've been struck since spending close to eight of the last 12 years out of the country. I knew of the affection and respect that the American people had for the military, but it's another thing to experience it firsthand. And it's tremendous to see the very genuine love and respect for the military that people have, and then they like to help in ways that they can.
I think you really touched on something. I think the American people really do want to help. There's a lot of compassion. I've always been struck by the fact that fewer than 1% of Americans serve this country. But service comes in a lot of different forms. How can people get involved? And in a moment, we're going to tell our audience how you're getting involved with service dogs. But tell us how people can get involved with the foundation.
Great. Thank you very much for that question, Andrea. And yes, it is true. Less than 1% of America's population serves in the active duty military at any given time, and an even smaller percentage have actually served in combat. But we're up to over 2 million combat veterans from the wars since 9/11. And then every year, 250,000 service members are leaving the service and rejoining society. So there is a constant turnover. There are many ways in which people can help. You mentioned many of the great partners we have. So again, many fantastic organizations that try to address different niches within this. Of course, one obvious way is by donating funds, and these funds, in the case of PenFed, because the credit union pays for most of our overhead expenses, salaries, office space, etc., the majority of a dollar that comes to the PenFed Foundation goes to the programs, and it's close to 95%.
Which is really high.
It's very high, and it's because the credit union pays for our overhead. So we're able to get your dollars directly into the programs that matter, the ones that Julie talked about, or to a veteran entrepreneur or whatever. So obviously that's one way. Obviously volunteering is another way. And so most of the organizations that you see that support veterans around the country will have volunteer events throughout the year. They'll have golf tournaments or galas.
And you don't have to serve in combat to
Exactly.
support our military. I mean, you can buy one of those gorgeous handcrafted wooden flags from Flags of Valor. You can support an organization that is veteran-owned and operated, female veteran co-founded, like Leashes of Valor, that also, you know, needs assistance. You mentioned September 11th, and you know I've watched every speech you've given. I've read every article. And I know September 11th was pivotal for you, as it was for a lot of Americans, but tell me about your office at the Pentagon and what that propelled you to do.
Sure. On 9/11, I was assigned to the Pentagon in the first floor D ring off the 4th corridor. And this is where the plane struck the building in the E ring and went through the E ring, the D ring, the C ring, and passed within 100 feet of my office. Thank God I was not in my office. Was at home, moving into our new our home in Springfield. The move had been rescheduled. I was supposed to be at work that day, and because of that, I was spared. And so, for many of us who had similar stories on that day, and there are others, this on top of already serving in the military, this was another call to action. And so, for many of us, myself included, I became committed on that day that this would never happen again to our country. And I'm proud to say that those who have served since 9/11, there has not been another attack like that on our country since then. Of course, we have to remain vigilant. But yes, I was very grateful and blessed to survive that, and then be able to turn our attention to going after the people who did that to our country.
Which is what you did for so many years in Afghanistan. We're coming up on the 15-minute mark, and I want to welcome everybody again. If you're just joining us, I'm Andrea McCarran with PenFed Digital. I'm joined today by retired U.S. Army 4-star General Mick Nicholson, who is talking about his vision for the future. He continues to serve and sacrifice for our country. He is now serving as the president of the PenFed Foundation. You told me you come from a military family.
Right.
You don't come from just any military family. I only learned, reading about you online, that your father is also a retired 4-star general.
Well, Dad, yes, from a military family, and this is something you see in the military quite a bit. And so many of my colleagues who are general officers, their children are in the military. My daughter is a lieutenant in the U.S. Army Reserves. Three of my cousins and I were all on active duty during this war. My father, my uncle served in Vietnam. My grandfather was in the Navy in the Second World War. And so many family members. In our extended family, we have about 48 veterans.
Wow. Was it your uncle who was the secretary of the VA?
Yes.
At some point?
Jim Nicholson was the ambassador to the Vatican, and then was the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. So service to our veterans is, and our service members is something that's a very important value in our family. We call it the family business. And my dad was
an honorable business.
Thank you. My father was the Undersecretary of Veterans Affairs, ran the National Cemetery Administration. He then ran the American Battle Monuments Commission after that, and my uncle was the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And so it's a privilege to follow in their footsteps and serve our veterans and serve our service members in this wonderful new role at the Foundation.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it back to Julie Myers, our colleague of PenFed Digital, to continue with some of the accolades and the statistics that are coming in.
So one question that we had was, you just mentioned your family's background. How has your childhood, and then again, your extensive military experience prepared you for your role at Penn Fund Foundation, because
Sure.
I'm sure you had a lot of offers on the table.
Yeah, I think number one, at this point in life, after spending over 36 years in the military, I have been very fortunate, blessed to experience a very gratifying career where you feel like you're doing something important that makes a difference for the country and makes a difference for the people with whom you're working. And so the chance to continue in a track that enables you to feel that sense of gratification, contribution, fulfillment, that you're giving back to the people who are out there putting it on the line for our country, that's an important part for me and my family going forward. This was an important part of our calculus. And so that's why when this opportunity came up, and talking with the leadership at Penn Fed, you have many veterans who are in the leadership at Penn Fed, many West Point graduates, for example, but other services as well. Although on Army Navy Week we draw the line, but the other 364 days of the year, it's a great family here at Penn Fed of veterans, of people who care about the military. The Pentagon Federal Credit Union is the nucleus around which this was built, and of course that's about DoD and all of its supporters. So I'd also mention we help caregivers of military veterans. We help family members. At this year's gala, we honored military children because they make special sacrifices, and they are very strong, courageous, resilient children who then go on to do great things themselves. So this was an opportunity to remain a part of that family as I transitioned out.
I just want to jump in now and tell you that on one of our platforms, our Facebook page, we're hearing from a Vietnam veteran who had questions about service dogs. Yeah. And like we said, the American people are very kind. Someone else jumped in to answer his questions. Right. I also wanted to let Brenda Taylor know that we're not disregarding your question. She was saying, I know it's not one of your topics. Is there anything you can do to help all those women who have been drawn into all the scams using the general's name and photos? I know it's not your fault. It's happened way too often. Right. I would highly recommend you report this to your state attorney general, any kind of consumer protection office, and do feel free to reach out to us if there's something that our team can do. We're made up of former news people, so you can always email us at stories@pennfed.org, not just with your great stories about your community service and different ways you give back to our country, whether it's in uniform or not, but we are here to help with anything involving an active duty military person, a veteran, or a military family. We are here to help.
I'd also add to that,
please.
Andrea, the Army Criminal Investigation Command is also standing by to help. They have people assigned to this. This, unfortunately, is something that's going on across all the services.
I think what we're going to do, and Brenda, thank you so much for your question, what we'll do is get the relevant offices and their contact info to make it very easy for you to report this when it comes up. That's the best way we as a crowdsourcing can put an end to this. General Nicholson and I only met a few months ago. At the time, my third service dog in training, Maverick, was just a little ball of fur. And it was interesting, the first time we met, do you remember Maverick rolled up in a ball and slept on your foot? Right. And I think that was kind of it for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, so my wife and I have decided to go ahead and volunteer for this program, Canine Companions. We are very grateful to have been accepted into the program and looking forward to getting a puppy here in the next couple of months.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's such a great program. I mean, Andrew, you've done it 3 times yourself. Thank you.
Sure.
And these puppies are raised to 18 months and then trained further for a specific person who needs their help in any one of a range of areas. So it's a tremendous way to give back and help people out.
Right. And yeah, I'm very proud to be associated as a longtime volunteer with Canine Companions for Independence. It is the longest tenured service dog organization in the world. Right. Started in 1975, the organization has already placed more than 6,000 dogs, not just with wounded warriors, but other people, adults and children with disabilities. and it's really about giving independence to someone. So the entire organization and the Canine Companions family, which is very tight nationwide, could not be more delighted to welcome you and your wife Noreen. And we're looking forward to seeing you around the office with a puppy in mid-October or so.
Excited.
Sometime in the month of October, I'm told. Let's talk about another topic that is so important and so key to the successful transition from military active duty life to the civilian world, and that is employment. Tell us about, I know a couple of things. PenFed, we're very proud of our military employment program, penfed.org/careers, but the PenFed Foundation has some great job openings now. And tell us also about your philosophy on employment.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. So there's been a tremendous outpouring of support from across the business community in the United States on this. You know, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other organizations have helped to lead an effort hiring our heroes, which is focused on hiring veterans. I mean, hundreds of thousands have been hired. As I mentioned, 250,000 come into the workforce every year. So this is a continuous need, and when they come into the workforce, they bring leadership training, dedication, they're problem solvers, they have high energy, they're resilient, so they're great employees, and no matter what business gets them. And when you look at those institutions most respected in the United States, with the military at the top and small businesses right behind them. So veterans are great for small businesses, and I know that many of the organizations that have already come up online are focused on hiring veterans and using veterans. So thanks to them for doing that.
And that makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Right. So we are expanding our foundation to grow our capacity to be able to do more.
Any specific jobs you want to mention that we have on tap right now?
Yeah, we're looking at Chief Operating Officer to come in, a Director of Development. That was to help us increase the donations to expand our programs, a Director of Outreach so that we can better connect with the beneficiaries, the potential beneficiaries out there, and expand our network even further amongst those other organizations with whom we're working. So again, some great opportunities here, and as you mentioned in PenFed, with our Director of Veteran Employment, Charlie Mills has done a great job of bringing in many veterans into the organization.
Charlie Miles, Miranda Jones, Emma Phillips is our recruiter who goes on campus. You may all see them at job fairs in this area, but they're also all online. They're all on LinkedIn, and a good way to reach out to them there. And with Emma, you will see another Canine Companions dog named Clint. We're really proud of our service. Again, not everyone can go into combat, not everyone can get in the uniform, but you can serve your country and your community in a variety of ways. And when General Nicholson gets his Canine Companions puppy this fall, it will be the 6th service dog in training at PenFed, which says a lot about our CEO, James Skank, and his commitment to giving back to the community.
Absolutely.
There is speaking of our CEO, there is quite a West Point connection in this building. Obviously, we like to hire leaders. You went to West Point and Georgetown. You have 2 bachelor's degrees. You have 2 master's degrees. You teach at Harvard's Kennedy School. You have time to do anything else? You have time to run a foundation?
Well, these are all great opportunities and ways to give back. And so James was very understanding of my desire to be able to continue to stay connected with the military, to stay connected with future leaders at the Harvard JFK School. I teach leadership in their executive education program, as well as occasional programs abroad at National Defense University, working with the capstone program with our rising general officers. And it gives us a chance, and there's many senior leaders who do this, and it gives us a chance to share our experience with the next generation of military leaders so that they can learn from the challenges, the mistakes, the problems that we faced and how we worked our way through them.
In fact, you and I and the digital team, our CEO and some other members of our team will be heading to Dartmouth, Tuck School of Business next weekend. You want to give a nutshell synopsis of what that's all about? I think it's fascinating.
So Tuck has a great program that works with military veterans and athletes. And I mean, I'm talking Olympic class athletes,
Right.
and helping them make the transition from their careers of sports and the military into the business community. So PenFed Credit Union will be there. James Skank, our CEO, will be there. Seda Goff, our entrepreneur director. Charlie will be there, and others, and you and the whole team. And the idea is to help them inform their transition. Again, as I mentioned, these leaders, if they've been leaders on athletic fields or leaders in the military, they have tremendous self-discipline, energy, drive, and helping them to focus that, to better understand the new playing field that they're stepping onto is important, and that's where we hope to step in. And then
It's funny, I hadn't made the analogy between elite athlete and military
Sure.
service member, but they really are a good
Yeah.
combination.
Well, they're used to dealing with kind of hierarchical structures. You have a coach, you have a commander.
Very
The
self-disciplined.
business arena is a little different than that, so helping to adjust to the new, how do you get unity of effort with people over whom you have no control? How do you negotiate? I mean, Americans tend to be transactional, and those in the military, we tend to be based have operated in a rules-based system.
Right.
And so being able to demonstrate the flexibility, have the flexibility to deal with an environment that's not as rules-based, that maybe is a little more flexible. I think this is one of the issues you deal with. And how do you get outcomes from people over whom you have no authority, as you did in the military? There is a way to do this. It comes down to relationships and a degree of trust that you establish, and this is extremely important. So I think I'm really looking forward to the chance to engage with all the students up there and talk about this.
Yeah, and you're giving the keynote speech
Yes, yeah.
on Sunday evening,
After dinner.
and one of the really cool events that's part of this weekend is a Shark Tank type
Right.
event,
Yeah.
where entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs will be pitching, and
Right.
PenFed is going to give a cash award to the
Right.
winner. Our CEO, James Skank, is one of the judges,
Great.
and I wanted everyone to know we will be recording this Dartmouth Tuck version of Shark Tank, editing it down and sharing it on all social platforms. One of your speeches recently, you talked about your 7-3-2 strategy, and a lot of us took that to heart.
Right.
Can you talk about,
Sure.
it's so simple,
Yeah.
sometimes simplicity, less is more sometimes.
Yeah.
So tell us about 7-3-2 and why it works for you.
Sure. So I think as you rise up to more senior levels, but really at all levels, your brain function is extremely important. You're dealing with complexity, you're dealing with challenges, you're dealing with relationships, and so one of the key considerations is having the self-awareness
Right.
to understand what it takes for you to perform at your peak. And so one of the number one things here is sleep. And so understanding yourself, how much sleep do I need for my brain to perform at its highest level of functioning is critically important. And in many scientific studies will show the effect of a lack of sleep is the same as being inebriated. So
Wow.
on your ability to process, make decisions, etc. So 7 hours of sleep, I have found for myself, was absolutely critical. Now, obviously in combat, not always possible to get that, but whenever you have a chance to get back to where you can get adequate sleep, it's critically important. The second thing is nutrition. And so nutrition, again,
Are
exceedingly...
those MREs getting any better?
Well, fortunately, we had some great chow in Afghanistan
Oh, did you
provided
really?
by.
Okay.
Well, I ate a lot of Afghan meals, and Afghan food's delicious. And I've eaten on mud floors in villages and in many places around Afghanistan, to include in governors' offices and with the government of Afghanistan. So I love Afghan food. There's a lot of great Afghan restaurants in Northern Virginia. But by nutrition, we mean getting the adequate amount of nutrition, put
Right.
fuel in the machine so you can perform on a given basis, and make sure it's the right kind of fuel.
Right.
So 3 meals a day, properly balanced meals, so that's the 3. So 7 hours of sleep, 3 meals a day. And then 2, frankly, is it gets to your emotional and spiritual balance.
Right.
And so that's a different formula for everyone. In my case, in Afghanistan, it was calling home to stay connected with my family. I would talk to my wife on this last deployment usually once a day. And this was a 2.5-year deployment.
Wow.
And I only came home a few times during that. So staying connected with her and staying connected with my parents and my children was extremely important. And I found this keeps you grounded, keeps you balanced. And then, of course, for those who have a spiritual component to their lives, this is extremely important as well. And so that balance.
I'm just going to jump in for a moment. Sorry to interrupt you. If you're just joining us, we've reached the 30-minute mark in this live conversation with retired U.S. Army 4-star General Mick Nicholson, who is the new president of PenFed Credit Union's foundation. And we're just talking about General Nicholson's multiple deployments in Afghanistan, 76 months in combat. And one thing that struck me about what you've said repeatedly in the public and to your troops is you're not just incredibly passionate about service, you're really passionate about the Afghan people. What is it about them that really touched you?
We have no better friend in that part of the world than the Afghan people. And so we have sacrificed there. We have invested there. The Afghan people have sacrificed. Not only through casualties, but in terms of the effect on their lives, the fact that many of the families have, there's really not a family in Afghanistan that hasn't been deeply affected by this war and lost loved ones. And they strongly desire peace. They want and need the world's help. They know this, but they also want peace. And the Afghan people, the vast majority of them, yes, there are some that are engaged with our enemies over there, but the vast majority of the Afghan people want peace and want friendship and a close relationship with the United States. They don't want to see their country become a launching pad for terrorist activities in the region, in the world, and certainly not against America. So they need our help, and they've gotten a lot of help, and they want to take it forward on their own. They want to see an end to this war, and they want to be able to be a place that we could bring our families to one day.
Right, and speaking of peace, there is some optimism on the horizon,
right,
that things are looking up in Afghanistan. We're not here to address that today,
right,
but I do want to let our audience know when and if some type of a peace deal is reached, you will be talking to us again,
yes,
and we will share that on all of PenFed's social media platforms. I'm going to turn it back over to our colleague Julie Myers, who has more audience questions and comments coming in.
We had a quick question from Danique from Leashes of Valor. She wanted to know where you've seen the foundation go or veterans go in their transition. What happens to their needs? Are they changing from like the past 10 to 15 years till now?
Yeah, it is a great question. Thanks very much, Denise. And I think again, many veterans, by the time they leave, at least half are married, so they have families. I think they've had to deal with the fact that it's been difficult for spouses to get employment in the military. We see the rate of spousal unemployment in the military is higher than the nationwide average. And so I think they're dealing with some of these challenges, financial challenges on making ends meet, moving back into their community that they've chosen, seeking employment both for the veteran and the spouse, and getting their first home. So in this regard, there are some good programs out there. Of course, I mentioned VA loans, and then we're ready to help with the Dreammaker grants to help them get into that first home. And with the current interest rates being what they are on mortgages, this is a good time for military families to consider owning a home. Additionally, we know college student debt is an area that many families are dealing with around the country, to include military families. And so if you look at the fact that there's 1.5 or 1.6 trillion in student debt, if you take, say, 1% of that would constitute about 16 billion in debt, perhaps carried by veterans and families. And we're doing more research on this. And this is an area where we're going to run a pilot program in the next year, and at the end of 2019 into 2020, to try and learn where we can have an impact on helping active duty military members, their families, and veterans with student debt. And so this is a very complex issue. It's a tough issue, but it is one of the areas we're going to try to work on. So housing, debt, and some of these areas are the things that we want to help with.
And General Nicholson, some members of our audience have raised the very sensitive issue of veteran suicide. And I have to tell you, that was what propelled me to start raising service dogs.
Right.
What's the answer? It's still, it's such a daily tragedy. I know the numbers have the estimate is 20, 23 a day. Right. Bottom line is 1 a day is too many. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think connecting with veterans, connecting with people, in my experience on active duty, unfortunately, sometimes someone who's in distress tends to isolate, and it's difficult for them to stay connected. And so one of the watchwords, of course, that we looked at in the military was, if you see someone that's having trouble, reach out to them. Sometimes a simple engagement in a day that may not be significant to the person who's initiating it may be very significant for the person who's in distress and is just
it could be pivotal.
It's
they just
absolutely
need one small act of kindness.
And this intervention, if you will, in what is a very difficult time for them, can sometimes make all the difference in helping them to get help, and then destigmatizing getting help. So many in the military, tend to be strong, silent types. They tend to internalize the problems. These are character traits that enable them to deal with tough challenges on the battlefield.
Right.
But these same character traits can sometimes lead them to isolate or try to solve a problem themselves that maybe is beyond solving themselves.
And isn't that often the reason why it's so difficult for them to transition from military life, where they bottle everything up by design, into the civilian landscape?
Well, one of the things, of course, when you transition is the loss of this great support network you had.
That's big.
So the love that is felt between comrades on the battlefield and in small units, it sustains you through many, many difficult hours and days and years on the battlefield. And so when you leave the military and you step away from this tight-knit community of people who you're with every single day, it is very difficult. And so staying connected with them is important. I know since I've gotten out, I call many of my friends on active duty and those who also retired, and we stay in touch, and lots of times, telling war stories, but just staying connected, staying in touch. Sometimes with those who are in distress, there can be a trigger event that might cause a problem, that might prove to be just the straw that breaks the camel's back. And I'd say if someone sees a veteran or anyone dealing with a crisis, that something that could be a trigger event, then that's a good time to step in and say, hey, how are you doing? How are you dealing with that? Can I help? Can I connect you with somebody who can help you? So I'd encourage anyone who's dealing with someone who might be in distress, veteran or not, and especially as they encounter something that is causing a significant change in their lives, is a good time just to step in and do a check on how they're doing.
Our country has become accustomed to this national anti-terrorism mantra. If you see something, say something.
Right.
It could probably apply to this as well.
Absolutely.
And I think what we'll do as well, Julie, is after this chat ends, we're going to post the National Suicide Hotline number as well.
Thank you.
Any other resources that all of you out there have found helpful, please let us know about them, message us, or post it for our chat. Is there anything else about the foundation and your vision for its future that we haven't touched upon yet?
Sure, we're looking to grow the foundation, so that's the vision of the credit union, and the foundation is created and supported by the credit union, but we rely on donations from others in order to increase our programs. The credit union continues to provide for our overhead expenses. This means that most of a donor's dollar will go right into the programs. We're looking to grow our ability to invest in entrepreneurs. We're looking to do more in terms of getting service members and veterans into homes. We're looking to do more in terms of helping them with financial assistance. And over the next year, as we scope the student loan space, we're going to run a pilot and try to see where and how we could have the greatest impact in this area. We're also, of course, I mentioned the Dreammaker grants, but we're into this area through partners like USA Vets, through others, on how to help veterans with affordable housing as they make that transition as well. So if these are programs that our viewers are interested in supporting, we welcome the chance to engage with any of them and all of them on how they can help us help veterans.
And because the foundation's overhead is covered by PenFed Credit Union, really, as you said, at least 95% of every dollar is going directly to help these military families, caregivers, spouses, active duty veterans. No donation too small, correct?
Exactly.
I know we do a lot with a little.
Absolutely. And again, some of these grants that we're giving to a military family or to a veteran are as small as $1,000 plus or minus. And this can make a huge difference at a pivotal point or in dealing with a crisis and prevent, what's a challenge from becoming a crisis for them, and to prevent an eviction, to prevent a loss of a vehicle and things like this. So even a few dollars can make a big difference in the lives of a service member or their family or a veteran.
And I just want to remind our audience, you can find all of the information we've discussed, whether it's the Dream Makers grant for housing covering closing costs, any kind of financial assistance, any kind of donation you'd like to make, volunteerism. It's all at PenFedFoundation.org. I'm going to turn it for one last time to our colleague, Julie Myers. What do you have going on?
You mentioned the interest-free loans earlier, and I just want to give some quick facts about the PenFed Foundation. Since its beginning, they've backed more than 20,200 interest-free loans.
Wow.
Which are the trustworthy alternative to the predatory lending. And then you also touched on the Dream Makers. In just 2018 alone, there were 186 Dream Makers that the PenFed Foundation helped.
Right.
And over the course of the foundation, through its entirety, $7.2 million has been given to help over 1,400 military families. So
Thanks,
the more you grow, the more
people we can help.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
Final word to you, General.
Oh, again, thanks so much, Andrea, for covering this. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the viewers for tuning in and hearing about the foundation. We're looking to stay engaged in the coming years and again, expand the foundation, expand our reach, and then continue to partner with all those other great organizations out there. And looking forward to getting the puppy.
And hopefully the puppy will sleep as well as Maverick.
Yeah, he's done
Maverick,
very
to
well.
those of you watching, Maverick may look like a full-size Labrador Retriever, but he's actually just turned 6 months old. He's 60 pounds. He's a big boy. And just to give you a quick rundown of how Canine Companions for Independence works, a nationwide organization, training centers across the country, volunteers like you and I raise these puppies. And I also want to give a shout out to Emma Phillips with Clint, Lisa Jennings. The number 2 at our PenFed Credit Union is raising a service dog. So if people as busy as Lisa and you can find the time to do this, really anybody can. This organization allows you to co-raise a puppy, which is unique and very helpful if you have a friend, neighbor, colleague. Kind of takes a little bit of the burden off of you. You raise the puppy, teach it about 30 basic obedience commands over 18 months. And then they get turned in. Yes, it's a sad day. People say, how can you do it? How can we not? And I always say, as empty as your heart feels at that moment, it is more than filled when you meet the person who is the recipient of the service dog you nurtured and loved. And it's a wonderful program, as is the PenFed Foundation. And congratulations to you. We're really happy to have you on board.
Thank you,
and maybe next time we do one of these live chats, you will have a little puppy with you. So General Nicholson, our PenFed Digital colleague Julie Myers, our Foundation colleague Seda Goff, PenFed Digital's Shauna McNally, Chris Mullen, John Moger. It takes a team effort to make this possible. Want to thank all of them as well. If you have any more questions in the next days and weeks ahead, please feel free to post them on PenFed social media platforms. Also, please be sure to follow us, because we mentioned Flags of earlier, a veteran-owned and operated business based in Virginia. They make these beautiful, made in the USA, handcrafted wooden flags. And we will be giving one away each week for 10 weeks leading up to Veterans Day as a way of saying thank you to those of you who have served. So check out and follow our Facebook page, PenFed Credit Union Facebook, to get information on that. I just ordered my first one. I'm very excited about it. And the veteran even signs the back of it. And this one gentleman that we met in the course of our story even signed it, Air Force, exclamation point. That's my late father, who's buried at Arlington National Cemetery. That's his branch of service.
Wonderful.
So when I ordered it, I put in a little request.
That's wonderful.
But thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.